Morning, everyone. Morning. It's so good to see you. If we've not met before, my name is Ben, and I head up some of the music that we do here, some of the singing that we do here. It's my privilege to be concluding this morning our Closer Than You Think series. And this series, as Steve said, has been looking at how we can experience God through the senses. And Steve, our senior leader who's hosting today, he kicked off. He did 2 weeks in a row. That's how good he is. He kicked off with sight and taste. Then we had Seven who spoke about touch. And then last week we had Richie. Who was here last week? It was phenomenal. Thank you so much for what you did last week. Round of applause. Everybody's clapping you. Now, because of Richie, like if you have ever spent any time with Richie or you listened last week, you will know that he has a phenomenal impact on whoever he speaks to or speaks with, and his character comes across instantly. So much so, we put a clip on social media of him last week, and it got 1.3 million views. 1.3 million views, which meant that our online audience doubled overnight. And today, you don't have the senior leader, you've got the worship leader, and he's cooking bacon. What's gone so wrong? So if you're joining us for the first time online, if you're joining us for the first time in the room, you are so welcome. We were speaking earlier with the tech team, and they wish that this was smell-o-vision, because today we are looking at fragrance. Are you starting to get a waft of bacon? I love the smell of bacon, right? In the first service, I said, nothing beats the smell of bacon, and then about 4 people went. And I can imagine there's a section over here that isn't too happy with me right now. Email Steve, he approved it. But smells are amazing, right? Freshly cut grass, morning coffee, sun cream. I didn't wear sun cream this week. I don't know if you can pick that up on the camera. That's quite a bad one. Hospitals have a smell. Your grandparents' house probably has a smell. Smell has this ability to transport you somewhere in an instant. For me, as I begin to start smelling this bacon, I'm transported to like camping holidays, like where that smell kind of takes over the tent. Sometimes it's wonderful, sometimes it's not so much. I remember when I was growing up, we used to, my parents, we didn't, I can't take any credit for it, but my parents used to invite people over and welcome people into our house that maybe needed a bit of extra help, maybe needed a bit of extra community, and maybe were a little bit isolated. And I remember, this is awful by the way, I remember so vividly arguing with my brothers and sister about who was going to sit next to this particularly smelly woman at dinner. Like, she smelled so bad it would like put you off your food. And that's awful, but fragrance matters. Maybe you've had one of those conversations with someone, possibly even after church, where they're speaking to you and they're the most lovely person and you're having the most lovely conversation, but all you can think is, please don't breathe. Don't breathe on me. Fragrance is important. Maybe you've had an impromptu barbecue and you haven't had time to wash your hair and it gets all in your hair and your clothes, doesn't it? Like I was speaking to Izzy last week. I'm going to turn this off because it's looking a little bit lively, isn't it? The last thing we need. But can you start to smell that? The fragrance fill in the room. I was speaking to Izzy last week. Izzy was stood here leading our singing so brilliantly, and she goes, this weather is just a nightmare for my hair. She said, it's just messing with all the natural oils. So I know, Izzy, you don't have to tell me. Fragrance matters. But on the other hand, you've got those people that always smell amazing, right? Maybe you hug them after church or just hug them generally in life. And you're just like, oh, I don't know what smell that is. I don't know what aftershave that is, but I need it. I probably can't afford it, but I need it. I mean, Pete Warnock's one of those people. Are you gathering around here? There'll always be a swarm of people around Pete because he just smells so good. Ben Goodwin, who's stood here, he smells incredible. Is it weird that I keep naming men? Probably. But these were genuinely the two examples that came to mind. Why are we so obsessed with smell? Why are we so obsessed with smell? Because the fragrance we carry matters. The fragrance we carry matters. People notice it. It leaves an impression. And today, I want to look at a story in the Bible recorded in the Gospel of John, which is an account of Jesus' life, where a fragrance didn't just fill a room, but it could change the way that we view worship. And I think if we truly understand this, I think if we truly take it on board and think about what's happening in that moment, it has the potential to change how we live our lives. So, we're in the Gospel of John, and John 12 says this: 6 days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. No biggie. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, which is classic Martha if you've read the Bible, whilst Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. So can you picture the scene? Friends gathered round a dinner table, eating together, laughing together, sharing with one another. Lazarus, who was there, who was dead only a few days before, is sitting there alive and well and enjoying the company of others. Then suddenly Mary stands up. She walks across the room and gets out this jar of perfume, not just any perfume, expensive perfume. The Bible goes on to tell us that it was worth around a year's wages. So can you imagine pouring your annual salary at someone's feet? She breaks it, pours it over Jesus, and wipes his feet with her hair, and the whole room falls silent. John records something fascinating. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. The fragrance filled the room. That's just not, it's not a nice little detail. It's actually the whole point. And John actually, there's a reason why he includes that Lazarus is there, right? Because it's not just a tiny detail, it's the whole point. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and Mary is Lazarus' sister. So imagine that your brother has died. Imagine being Mary. Imagine that your brother has died. You've cried all the tears you thought you could cry. You have grieved in a way that you didn't know was possible. You have hurt in a way that you never have in your life. And then Jesus turns up and brings him back to life. How do you begin to say thank you? How do you even begin to say thank you for someone raising your brother from the dead and bringing him back to life? Like some flowers and a box of chocolates and a nice card just isn't going to cut it. She needed to do something extraordinary because the miracle was extraordinary. She had to do something way, way above and beyond. She had to do something extravagant. So she pours out what she has. She pours out what she has. And this teaches us something about worship. See, when people hear the word worship, I don't know what you think about when you hear the word worship. Maybe you think about the 10 minutes that we just had there when you walked into church. Maybe you think of a temple or religious figures waving kind of incense and stuff like that. I don't know what your view of worship is. But the Bible paints a picture of worship that is vast. The Bible paints a picture of worship not as something we sing, but as a response to what we value. Worship is our response to what we value the most. It happens when our hearts are overwhelmed, just like Mary's was, at the good things that Jesus has done. Which means music can be worship, giving can be worship, serving can be worship, forgiving someone can be worship, moving across the world to follow the call of God on your life can be worship. Your whole life can become worship because worship is not an event, it's a response. Worship is not an event, it is a response. And Mary's response was costly, right? As we said earlier, we know that this perfume was worth a year's salary. She poured it out on the floor. Just think about that. Whatever you earn in a year, just pouring it out on the floor, gone in a moment. People would think you would absolutely lost your mind. People would think that you'd lost the plot. And that is exactly what happens. And we're going to come to that in a little while. But let's stick with Mary's response at the moment, because it cost her finances. It cost her dignity. Because worship costs something. Worship costs something. As I say, for Mary, it was not only her finances, but it was her dignity. She washed his feet with her hair, so she took her hair out, which had been undignified. She knelt on the floor, which would have been, again, undignified, and washing someone's feet. But every moment of Mary's response to Jesus is saying, Jesus, you are more than my comfort. You are more than my reputation. You're more than my possessions, because worship should cost us something. Real worship costs us something. Now, if you're new to church or if you're watching online, you might have noticed that when you walked in today and found it a little bit odd that there's a bunch of people raising their hands during our time of worship. And it is a bit weird. It is a bit weird. And when I first started going to church, I found it very odd. But the reason we do that, it's a biblical, it's something that we find in the Bible. But it's also just a natural response. We don't lift our hands because God's checking in on us and checking that we remembered the actions, but because our bodies express what our hearts are feeling. Our bodies express what our hearts are feeling, which means tonight, when you are staying awake till the early hours of the morning and Harry Kane scores that final last-minute winner, you will lift your hands. When my kids come running up to me when I pick them up from school, I lift my hands. If someone walked in here with a gun, I lift my hands. Because it's an act of love, it's an act of celebration, but also it's an act of surrender. So when we're lifting our hands, simply we're saying, God, I surrender to you. God, I love you. God, thank you, you're so worthy. It's not about looking spiritual. It's about responding to what God has done and who God is. And here's a challenge for us, because actually our worship doesn't cost us a year's wage, does it? It doesn't cost us a year's wage, but for some of us it costs an early morning. Getting here early, plugging in cables, pushing flight cases, parking cars, making coffee. For some of us, it costs our finances. Some of you give into the life of the church, which means that we can hire this hall, which means that we can buy the drum kit, hang the tellies, that mean we can project the words. Maybe it costs you your finances. For some of you, it's forgiving someone. The cost is forgiving someone that doesn't deserve it. The cost is, acting with integrity when nobody's watching, loving your neighbor, praying when life is hard. That's the cost of your worship. Staying faithful when it could be easier to walk away. Because true worship always costs us something, not because God wants to take from us, but because love is always demonstrated through sacrifice. We sometimes say around the Forge, then, if Jesus is really who he claimed to be, if he really did give his life for us, then we should do, then he's worthy of a very best. We say, when someone predicts their own death and resurrection and pulls it off, we should do what that person says. We should worship that guy. But the story doesn't end there. And as I alluded to earlier, the story goes on. Whenever somebody offers extravagant worship in the way that Mary did, in the way that we sometimes can, there's always going to be someone who says, that's a bit much. And this is what John records as Judas' response. Some of the disciples, one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, objected, why wasn't that perfume sold and given money to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. And at first glance, that sounds pretty reasonable, right? I'm sure that if somebody poured tens and thousands of pounds at someone's feet right now, then you'd probably have something to say about it. You'd probably say, hey, there's probably a more practical way to spend this money. John lets us in on something that people in the room didn't know, but Judas wasn't actually asking because he was concerned about the poor. He was just concerned with lining his pockets. And he sounded spiritual, but his heart wasn't. But I wonder if this is included as a warning to us. I wonder if this is included as a warning to us, because isn't it easy to become critical of someone else's worship? Isn't it easy to become critical of someone else's worship? Oh, this song, this new song, I hate the new song. I hate that we do old songs. I only want to do the new songs. I hate how loud it is. I hate how quiet it is. I hate that people raise their hands and are energetic. I don't think there's enough energy. And this is the mistake we've made. This is where we've got to, and it needs to change. And I want to challenge us this morning. Somehow, somewhere along the way, we've begun to make worship about us. And worship was never, ever meant to be about us. And it was never meant to be for us. It's meant to be for God. And only for God. And that's what Mary's doing. She's worshiping Jesus out of revelation for what he's done. And when we grasp this, our whole mindset to worship changes, because it means that the question doesn't go from, can we sing this song? The question becomes, was Jesus glorified? The question doesn't become how loud it is. The question becomes, is he worthy? And that means that you can walk into this place and your favorite songs can be on the set list. He's still worthy. Your least favorite song to be on the set list. He is still worthy. The band can be absolutely on fire. He is still worthy of our worship. The band can be crumbling to a mess. He is still worthy of our worship, because God is the same and is worthy of our worship. Worship isn't for you. It's for God. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that we shouldn't strive. Like one of our values as a team is to strive for excellence, and we put a lot of work into that, and we're always trying to improve. But worship isn't designed to revolve around our preferences. It's designed around the worth of Jesus. And here's the beautiful thing. When someone truly understands who Jesus is and what Jesus has done, just like Mary did, extravagant worship makes sense. Extravagant worship begins to make sense. And I've been thinking this week about my friends Steve, Zoe, and Phoebe, who are moving out to Zambia. A move that on paper costs them so much. It costs them their careers. It's cost them their house. It's cost them a lot of money. It's leaving jobs. It's leaving financial security. It's learning a new culture. It's starting again. On paper, you look at that decision and you think, what? It doesn't make sense. Why would anyone do that? It's exactly the same question that Judas asked Mary. Surely there's a more sensible way. But when you've encountered Jesus, sometimes the sensible option isn't the obedient one. Sometimes love looks extravagant. Sometimes love looks wasteful. Not because it actually is, but because people who haven't experienced Jesus just won't understand why you would give him everything. Mary wasn't trying to impress anyone. Stephen, Zoe, and Phoebe, they're not trying to impress anyone. They're simply responding to someone. That's worship. And that's where John ends on this sentence, that the house was filled with the fragrance of perfume. I love that. Filled with the fragrance. You see, when we grasp this, when we suddenly understand who we're worshipping, our worship won't stay private for very long. Our worship won't stay private for very long. It will fill the room, because the fragrance spreads, the atmosphere changes, the whole room knows something has happened. The fragrance fills the room. That reminds me of one particular time with my family. I remember I was probably around 7, 8 years old. And we were on our way, we'd been invited to a wedding. And there was my two brothers and my sister, and we're all under the age of 10, and Mum had made this special effort to get us like suited and booted, right? We had shirts on. I remember like borrowing my dad's tie and, hanging down, and polishing our shoes. And the wedding was a little way away. And my younger brother David, he struggles a bit with the old travel sickness. And I remember being on the drive, and all of a sudden, the inevitable happened. But the problem is, and I'm sure parents in the room, you've maybe experienced this, if one of the kids is sick, it leads on to a bit of a chain reaction, right? And before I know it, there's 4 of us kids under the age of 10 years old that Mum had spent hours getting ready, all on time, on the side of a road somewhere, using what felt like one baby wipe to mop sick off of our lovely outfits. But somehow we made it to the church. We were a little bit late, and I remember it being like a really fancy old church. And we were ushered in and kind of like sneaked in the back. The only problem is that at the back of this old church were these huge storage heaters. You know, the ones that blow warm air. And as my sick, marinated family stood there, the congregation, one by one, start to look around. The fragrance filled the room. Whether it's bacon, whether it's perfume, or whether it's something else, the fragrance fills the room. Fragrance spreads, it lingers. People carry it with them. And this is the image that the New Testament gives us. The Apostle Paul writes later, it's so many examples of this, that we are to be the aroma or the fragrance of Christ. That Paul says our generosity is a fragrant offering. He says that Jesus gave himself as a fragrant sacrifice. This language keeps coming back. It keeps returning. Fragrance, fragrance, fragrance. Why? Because when people experience you, they should experience something of Jesus. And that's not because we've got all the answers. That's not because we're perfect. Not because we never make mistakes, but it's because we've received a revelation with him through spending time with him. And then something struck me this week that I've never noticed before. When Mary walked out of that house, she will have smelt like Jesus. Think about it. She's poured this perfume over his feet and washed his feet with her hair. She will have been covered in the perfume. Everywhere she went afterwards, she will have carried the fragrance of that moment. I wonder if people will have noticed. I wonder if she would have walked past people later in the day and people would have been taken aback, like, Mary, you smell different. There's something different about you. Of course there's something different about her. She's encountered Jesus. She'd been close to Jesus. And isn't that what our worship is really about? Isn't that what our worship is really about? It's not about the amount of decibels coming from a stage. It's not about attending church more. It's about remaining close to Jesus. It's not about trying harder. It's about drawing closer, to spend more time with him. And as we begin to spend more time with him, we begin to sound like him. We begin to act like him. We begin to forgive like him, serve like him, show compassion like him. And people might not know what it is, but they'll be able to notice something different, a kindness that doesn't make sense, a generosity that's unexpected, a hope that doesn't disappear when life gets difficult. That is the fragrance of Christ. And this is what I want to leave us with today. You're carrying a fragrance. The question isn't whether you're carrying a fragrance. The question is, what are you leaving behind? When you walk into school tomorrow, what's the fragrance you're carrying? What fills the room? When you walk into work tomorrow, what fills the room? When you go home and have dinner with your family members, what fills the room? Because whatever we're full of eventually spills out. And my prayer is that people wouldn't leave here today talking about bacon or the music or the message. But my prayer is that people would truly encounter Jesus. Because when we truly encounter Jesus, we can't stay the same. Mary couldn't stay the same. I couldn't stay the same. Steve and Zoe and Phoebe couldn't stay the same. We're going to hear Gemma's story in a bit. She couldn't stay the same. So let us be a people that keep coming back to the feet of Jesus to pour out on him, pour out our lives in worship. People who discover day after day that he really is closer than you think. The fragrance you carry matters. The fragrance you carry matters. Let's leave every room smelling a little bit more like Jesus. Let's take a moment. Let's just shut our eyes. You know, we've been talking about Mary all morning, how she encountered Jesus and responded with everything she had, but maybe today isn't about Mary. Maybe it's about you. Perhaps you've been around church before. Maybe you've watched online for a little while. Maybe someone invited you today. Perhaps this is your very first time hearing about Jesus. Can I tell you something? Jesus isn't looking for people who have got it all figured out. He's not looking for perfect people. He's looking for people that will simply respond to him. And the amazing thing about our Christian faith is that it doesn't begin with what we can do for God. It begins with what God has already done for us. Because before Mary ever even poured out the perfume, Jesus was already on his way to the cross. Before any of us could earn his love, he'd given it away. He chose us. He gave himself for us. He made the first move. Our worship isn't about earning God's love. It's a response to what he has already given to us. So maybe for the first time today, your response is this: Jesus, I don't understand everything, but I want to know you. If you really did give your life for me, then I want to follow you. And if you've prayed that prayer, we would love to connect with you. Jesus, thank you so much that you are closer than we think. Thank you that you first loved us. Thank you that you gave everything for us. Would you help us become people who don't simply admire you from a distance, but that draw close to you? People whose lives become an act of worship. People who carry your fragrance into every home, every workplace, every classroom, in conversation. And for those that are responding to you for the very first time today, let them know your peace, your grace, your mercy, your forgiveness, and your love. In Jesus' name, amen. And if that was a prayer that you prayed for the first time today, please come and speak to me or Steve or one of the other team. We would love to hear from you and give you some resources to help with that. But we're going to end our service with how we started. We're going to worship who God is, what he's done, because he is worthy. So should we stand together?